What's up, guys? Today we are doing a bit of a comparison and first impressions of the new Volair Forza Control 2 and Control 1. The Mach 2 Forza has been wildly popular for the last year, so is this a worthy upgrade from it? As a quick disclosure, Volair did send these paddles to me for free, but no review was guaranteed, no review was paid for, they had no input on this video, and all thoughts are my own. I do have an affiliate link and discount code in the description if you do choose to purchase one of these, and that just helps keep supporting the channel to make content just like this. The price of the new Control 2 Forza is $199, which is a $20 increase from the Mach 2 Forza. You can use code PBStudio to shave that down to $180, but the Mach 2 Forza aftercode was $160 before, so just keep that in mind. And then the rest of the specs across the board are going to be very similar to the Mach 2 Forza. It's the same wide body shape, has a 5.5 inch handle, only comes in a 16mm variant this time, and features a full Kevlar surface. If you look on screen now, I will have the swing weight, twist weight, and RPM numbers for both the Control 1 and Control 2. Largely, the specs are almost identical across the board to last year's Mach 1 and Mach 2 Forza. The swing weights do seem to be a couple points lighter. However, I don't know if that's just because of my specific units or they are actually lower across the board compared to last year. So at best, the changes are that the paddles feel slightly faster in the hand compared to the Mach models, but not by significant margins. And then they do also come in these new blue and green colors. Personally, the green seems like a pretty questionable choice given that we play with a green ball in Pickleball, but Aizec never complained during our hitting session about the ball blending into the face too much. So that might just be up to individuals on how much that bothers them. Last thing I want to talk about is grip consistency of these aramid/Kevlar surfaces. Certainly, these are capable of getting great spin, but something I have noticed with many of the Kevlar paddles I have received is the grip consistency is all over the place. Sometimes a paddle will be completely smooth and the next same unit is extremely rough. Bigger thing that I also feel like I've noticed with Kevlar surfaces is sometimes it's rough in one area but smoother in another. Not that we haven't seen that with carbon fiber paddles, that can certainly happen, but I feel like the consistency of raw carbon fiber has been better overall than the Kevlar paddles that I've received in the last year or so. And in the case of the Control Forza models that I received, both of them were only getting about 1800 RPM, and both of them felt like they had kind of dodgy consistency in terms of grit. So that is a little bit disappointing to see that drop from the Mach models last year, which were pushing 2000 plus. Of course, your unit may be completely fine and have no issues, but I did want to point this out because I think the consistency of grit on Kevlar style surfaces is a reason to be more hesitant to choose it over other raw carbon fiber paddles. And now I am going to go on a small little rant here. This doesn't really have to do with Volair, but it is really disappointing to see the grit consistency of paddles throughout the entire industry. I feel like that is not something that the consumer should have to worry about when buying a paddle. Am I going to get a gritty one? Am I not going to get a gritty one? Is it going to be smooth on one side? Is it not going to be smooth? Is it going to be super rough? Blah, blah, blah. You get the point. Like, it just shouldn't be something that anyone has to think about. So I do hope that this is something the industry will start focusing on, because it honestly gets tiring in reviews having to say, well, yours might be grittier or yours might not be grittier. So honestly, just do better, industry, because it's what people want to see. Really quickly, before Aizec and I share our initial thoughts between these two paddles, I do want to share my thoughts on the Mach 2 Forza. This is a paddle I never got to fully review, but I did main it for several months over the summer and thought it would be good to share the context in this video. Overall, I think the Mach 2 Forza is one of the best control paddles that you can buy right now, period. It has had consistently high spin across the board, the sweet spot is very large, it's quick in the hand, and it feels very solid on resets. As far as control goes, it really nails all aspects that you could ask for. Even with all of the new releases this year, I still think it's one of the best control paddles that you can buy. So just because the Mach 2 Forza is an older paddle, I really would not overlook or count it out just because it isn't the new flashy toy. I feel like the paddle industry gets really caught up in the newest thing always being better, but in recent times, new doesn't necessarily mean better. In a lot of cases, it's just mildly different or a small improvement in one area that might fit one player's style a little bit more. So yes, the Mach 2 Forza is almost a year old, but I don't even think that matters. I still think in terms of control paddles, it's one of the best you can buy, and that's including with these new control models that we're talking about right now. But anyways, with that being said, here are our thoughts on the new control models.
All I have to say to start off is I am so confused. Compared to the Mach 1, this is supposed to be the control version of that paddle. And after my testing, I'm thoroughly confused on where and why does this paddle exist? Like, it doesn't quite make sense to me. It doesn't fit. It's as if Selkirk made a control version of the Lux. The Forza was already a great control paddle. Like, I like that paddle. It feels good. It's soft. It's plush. It's a very all-court to control paddle. So making a control version of that doesn't quite make sense. I get they're making it a Kevlar surface. It's hot. It's new. At this point, it's not even really that new. So it just feels late. The original Mach 1 Forza, in my opinion, actually felt like I had more control and better feel with that paddle. Mach 1 Forza had a more plush feel, and in my opinion, the sweet spot felt a bit more forgiving and bigger. Now, that could be just our particular units. The Mach 1 Forza that I had felt a little bit heavier, so it could be a little bit more stable than this one. But what I will say about this paddle is it's not bad. Like, it plays just fine. If you like the look and you like this shape of this paddle, by all means, it's not a bad paddle. It performs well. It's got plenty of control. It's not a power paddle by any means. Don't expect it to be. It's not going to be blowing people away with drives, but it felt nice. There's nothing necessarily bad about it, but it doesn't really make sense compared to the old version. It's not an upgrade by any means, and that's kind of all I have to say about it. There's really not that much. If anything, it's just a cosmetic difference, really.
So honestly, I mimic a lot of what Aizec thought. The entire time I was playing with this paddle, I just kept finding myself going between them and saying, there's not that big of a difference. Yes, there is a subtle different feel off the face and it feels a little bit springier or maybe more poppy, but I wouldn't call it by significant margins. And I also find it mildly ironic that this new model is called the Control when I felt like during my session I actually had slightly better control on the old Mach 2 Forza. Now, for some of you out there, you might find it really appealing that you're getting slightly more pop. And when I say slightly, I really do mean slightly. It didn't feel like a big difference. But regardless, you might find it appealing that you're getting a similar amount of control with a little bit more pop. But the way I see it is, okay, you're paying a $20 upcharge from the Mach 2 Forza in order to get a Kevlar surface, which in the context of these two paddles, not performing that differently. And now you're potentially chancing that the grit consistency is worse than last year's Mach 2 Forza, which was known for getting great spin. Yeah, you might get amazing spin off the Kevlar one too if you happen to get the right model, but on both units that I got, they weren't anything to write home about. So is paying a $20 upcharge really worth it for just a tiny bit more pop and maybe a slightly different feel? For me, I would probably just pick the Mach 2 Forza. But some of you out there might see this, love the design, and love how it feels. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that the Control 2 Forza is a great paddle. It's just that when the Mach 2 Forza still exists, I would push more people toward that. I also just find it slightly confusing with how late Volair was to adding this paddle to their lineup and why they chose to go for another control-oriented model rather than going for something all-court or even power-related. They already had one of the best control paddles that you could buy on the market, so why go and make another control paddle? I just find that decision a little bit confusing and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I feel like if anything, doing the Mach 2 Forza with a polyester surface actually would have been pretty interesting because a lot of people right now are liking how that gives you the sensation of a little bit more dwell and being softer. So I think that would have made more sense under the Control name. I'm sure Volair was working on this for a while and they weren't just about to pivot just because there was a new hyped up surface on the market. But regardless, I just feel like releasing a Kevlar version of the Mach 2 Forza this late just doesn't feel like it makes a lot of sense. Like, I feel like it's just too little too late, basically. So yeah, that's really about all I have to say. Again, this is not a bad paddle by any means. I think there are going to be people who like it. I just don't know that it really makes sense with a $20 upcharge, and the Mach 2 Forza was already as good as it was. So anyways, that's what we thought about these paddles. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll catch you in the next one.